This could have easily been the sequel to the Waspy Moms Book Club video, but it's not. I find wrap-ups incredibly boring. I don't really care what I have to say about the books I read, to be completely honest. But I do enjoy filming the videos. I enjoy making videos. So I thought I would take two things that I enjoy, making videos and painting, and also drinking wine, which is a bonus, and do my wrap up this way. Let's give them something to talk about. A little book to figure out. The first book I'm going to talk about is The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. This came out this year, and I have been pretty good about reading new releases. I don't know what it is. It could be the pandemic. It could be my sadness. It could be having about 1 million different audio subscription services that I pay a lot of money for, but I feel as though I am better at reading new releases. So The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett is her second novel. It's a literary fiction novel. What is literary fiction? It's literary and it's fiction, but why? Is it just because it's sad? It's about two sisters who end up having completely different lives, and those lives are really predicated on the fact that one of the sisters decides to live her life as a white woman, they're both white passing, and the other sister decides to live her life as a mixed race woman. And it is a fantastic book. It spans the course of decades, and you get to see not only their lives, but their children's lives. I really enjoyed this. It's a read with not a ton of levity. So if you crave levity in a book, this isn't really going to have that. But I also wouldn't say that this book is like hard to get through. I think it's an incredibly accessible read, and incredibly well executed and interesting, and doesn't feel like you're chewing, which sometimes literary fiction I feel like can be. What followed was about a month-long reading slump that was finally broken by Get a Life, Kalei by Talia Hibbert. I knew I was going to love this book. It's a romance. It's a contemporary romance. I was like, there's no way I'm not going to love this. And I loved it. I listened to it on audio. I'm finding that I really enjoy listening to contemporary romances, especially on audio. I think contemporary books in general are easier for me to read via audio than to read physically. I don't know what it is. I think I just kind of get super distracted while reading them physically versus listening to them on audio. I love Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I feel like everybody has read this book, so I'm not going to say anything honestly all that interesting. I will say that I liked Chloe so much more than I liked Red, who is the main love interest in this book. I didn't love Red. There was a specific scene at the end where he was just so knee-jerk, and I found it very difficult to read, and it's something like, I know if I were Chloe in that situation, I would never have taken him back. But that's also because I am spiteful. So I also read Take a Hint, Dani Brown, which is the last book I read, but I'm just going to include it here. Take a Hint, Dani Brown follows Chloe's sister, Dani, Danica, who is this really tough girl, academic, doesn't really believe in relationships. She was hurt in the past until she decides to have a fake relationship with this security guard that she's friends with, who works in the same university she does. I love this more than Chloe Brown because I really, really enjoyed their dynamic. Really enjoy when women get to have their relationship baggage in books, because I don't feel like we get that often. So this was so much fun. It was very spicy. So was Chloe Brown, but I was with this book, I was like. Next I read You Should See Me a Crown by Leah Johnson. This was like a real anticipated read for like so many people, and it was for me too. It's a YA contemporary. I don't really read a ton of YA contemporary anymore, or really a lot of YA anymore. I don't read a ton of YA contemporary anymore because I don't like reading about high school. That's probably just because I don't like to remember high school. But I really enjoyed this. I thought it was so much fun. It felt incredibly cinematic. I think that's my one note I want to say, because I feel like everybody's talked about this a whole lot, but and deservedly so. I felt like this was a very cinematic book. I felt like this should be a Netflix movie, like ASAP. It's a book that asks a lot of questions, shows this really fully realized teenage girl who is living her life under a lot of pressure that she puts on herself, and a lot of walls that she has to put up to protect herself. She is a Black queer girl. She comes from a family that isn't always the most financially stable. Her mother and father have both passed away. It is quite an interesting, funny, smart, lovely, living novel, and I really, really liked it. Next, I read The Bookish Life of Nina Hill. I hated this book, to be completely honest. I hated it. I hated it so much. And let me tell you why. I hated it because I genuinely did not care about a single character in this book. This is about a woman named Nina Hill, works at a bookstore. She's very detail-oriented, I guess. She likes to plan. What I really didn't like about this book was I did not like the romance. I thought it was really poorly done and not fully fledged out. I had a problem with the fact that these two characters seemed like they only just wanted to sleep together and they didn't feel like they cared about each other at all, except for they would say things like they did care about each other, which I found that confusing. I just thought it was a really poorly executed book. There were a lot of references, which always annoys me. There was a lot of tweeness in the way it was written, like we would jump around perspectives in kind of a weird way. There were too many characters in this book, and none of them felt like real people. There's this whole extra element in this book, which is an entire plot line about how Nina finds out that her father, who she doesn't have a relationship with, has passed away and has given her this potential money, and she's having to deal with this family she didn't know existed, and that just felt incredibly random. I found the entire book to be very disjointed, poorly written, poorly executed, and not a single character that I liked. And that's it. Also, I didn't listen to this on audio, so maybe I would have liked it more if I listened to an audio, but reading it physically was not enjoyable for me. I haven't really been doing a ton of painting, full disclosure. I've been thinking about all these books. The next book I read was A Song Below Water by Bethany C. Morrow. I really liked this book. I thought it was super fun. It felt very reminiscent of an old school YA book from like 10 years ago, and I mean that as a compliment. There was something really tender and wholesome and fun and new about it, while also still feeling very nostalgic in the way mostly the magic system was created. This is about sirens and about magical people in the United States living in a society very similar to our society. You see protests in this book, police brutality, the way social media is used as both a tool for good and a tool for evil. It was a really interesting book. It talks a lot about the intersections of, in this case, being othered as the main characters are Black women, but also women who have these extra magical abilities that put them lower down in society and targeted against. It's really interesting. I think my favorite fun element of this book is there's a hot gargoyle, which I never thought I would read about a hot gargoyle, but here we are, and I'm happy for it. Thank you, Bethany C. Morrow. Next, we get to a bunch of books I read for that video, where I read 7 books in 7 days, so I'll be very quick about this. I read Julia Quinn's The Viscount Who Loved Me. This is the second book in the Bridgerton series. It's being adapted by Shonda Rhimes into a Netflix show, or has been adapted. I really love this series. It's about a big sprawling family who are all very interconnected, and each book follows one of the siblings falling in love. This is such a sweet, fun series. The first book, don't read it. It is really problematic. Skip to the second book and you'll be home free. From what I remember, it's a Regency era romance. You get all of the love and joy of Jane Austen with a little more spice to it, being that it is a romance. I really, really, really loved it. And I cried when I read it, because I cry a lot. Next, I read Wow No Thank You by Samantha Irby. I just love Samantha Irby. Like, she's so funny and relatable, but also very much her own person. Witty, lightning fast sense of humor that's also like feels very deeply personal, and I really loved it, and you should pick this up. I'm gonna read Samantha Irby's other books very soon, because she has 2 other collection of essays that have already come out. I have stopped painting. I'm just here. We've given up. All Adults Here by Emma Stroud. This is my favorite book I've read this year. I really loved it. I don't know if this book is for everybody, because it's a very slow-moving book about a dysfunctional family, which for a lot of people just sounds absolutely horrible, and I totally get that. But Emma Stroud, for me, rates characters who feel like just awful people that you also know and love deeply, and that is what this book is. I will say, this book has cheating in it, but it's challenge cheating, meaning that the other characters are like not okay. This book has an outwardly bisexual woman who is older. She's over 60, which is really interesting and cool to read, and that also has a side character who is trans. Really love this book so much. It's very tender, it's funny, it's very easy to get through. I loved it. Magic for Liars by Sarah Gailey. This is about a magical school, and there's murder in it. I didn't like it. I kind of said this in the video that I made where I read this book. I found this book to be really too perfectly wrapped up for me. It was a little too trying to do something deep and not necessarily being successful. Next, I read An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. I loved this. This is probably my second or third favorite book I've read this year. Who would have thought that Hank Green would be a better writer than John Green? But here we are. I do really like Turtles All the Way Down, though. I think it's actually a pretty good book. Anyway, I really love this. It was so much fun, but also incredibly sad, which is a great combination in an action-y sort of book with a lot going on. I think it's like what Ernest Cline thought he was doing when he wrote Ready Player One, in the way that it is paced, in the way that the characters are introduced. I loved it. And I just picked up A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor today, so ready to read the sequel. Next, I read Soul of a Witch. What to say about this? This was an impulse buy on Amazon, Kindle. It's like a Hallmark romance, Hallmark rom-com. It's not really a romance fully. Hallmark rom-com set in a Halloween town sort of place. It's a town full of witches. I felt like the atmosphere of this book was 9 out of 10. It felt very fall, it felt very atmospheric. Everything else about this book was 3 out of 10. The romance, the characters, the writing. But not in a way that it made me angry, just in I kind of figured. I think I will read the other books in the series because I did enjoy it, and it was such a fast read. It's 200 pages or something. But if you're looking for something really good that feels autumny, this isn't really what you're gonna get. It's more like you want to just read something super easy and that doesn't ask anything of you, but also has no smut in it. So those are all the books that I read recently. I didn't really get that far with my painting because I got too distracted talking about books. But c'est la vie. C'est la vie. C'est la vie. Hope you guys have a lovely day.